Bonjour. This lesson is on les prepositions that have to do with specific countries, not just general places, but countries. You'll see that there's some different rules involved with these. So we have our prepositions à, which means to or in. It can also mean at, or it might not even have a translation in English, as well as the preposition de, which means from. It can also mean of, but for the countries, it'll generally just mean from. So let's get started here and talk about what we know in general, and then we'll see what changes for the countries. So if you haven't already memorized these math equations that have to do with prepositions, go back, please, and watch the lesson on the prepositions. The ones that just have to do with regular places like the restaurant or school, those sorts of things. If you don't know them yet, you're going to have to memorize them in addition to some of the changes here. So take some time and look at them first. Alright, let's get started. If you have a feminine country, that's going to begin with a. Now, our rules before, la stayed the same, la. We're going to leave it like that. Some of you who already remember what's going to happen are trying to tell me, oh no, that's not right. Just hold your horses and let me get through what we already know, and then we'll get to the changes. And de next to la stays the same, de, la. I'm going to, again, go through this more quickly because I've already done 2 lessons that have to relate to this. A and le, that changes, that goes to the word o, just like the letter L-M-N-O-P. And de and le changes to you, not do, you. Just, it rhymes with our word tu, like you. Next to le changes to o, just like the letter again, but we just added an X, and de and le changes to de. And finally, when there's a vowel, we use that L apostrophe, and that does not change, just like this. Now, if you were listening in class, you have some sort of idea that not all of this is correct when it applies to countries. So let's look at that now. What is not correct? What are we going to have to change? The feminine ones here. And let's just stop there for now. First, the feminine ones. When you're going to a feminine country, you do not use the a la rule. You change it to en, okay? And you do not use the de la rule. You just use de. Okay, so if you were coming from France, you wouldn't say de la France. You would just say de France. And if you were going to France, you wouldn't say à la France, you would say en France. And that brings us to the countries that start with a vowel. We do not use the a and the l apostrophe. What we do instead is use that word en, just like we use for the feminine. And again, we do not say de and la. Now, if you looked at a feminine rule, we change it to de, but we cannot do that because there's an E at the end, and we're talking about here a country that starts with a vowel. Now, what do we do if we have the E here with something that starts with a vowel? We have to make a contraction and use that apostrophe. So these are our new words here. En, de, en, and the de apostrophe. So the masculine and the plural stay the same, and the vowel changes and the feminine changes. Now, again, I'm going to emphasize that this applies to the countries. When you're talking about where something hurts or places like going to school or the supermarket, you're going to use the math equations that you already learned. You can see that this just breaks the rules and is a little different than what you already learned. That's why I hope you really solidified that in your mind first. So let's move on and apply these rules to some example countries. Now I made an order. I wrote down an order of questions that you should ask yourself. There's a reason that you should go in this order. That reason, if you listen to the other lessons on the prepositions, is that you will save a lot of time wasted trying to figure out if it's feminine or masculine. You'll see if it's plural or if it's a vowel, you don't have to worry if it's feminine or masculine. See? If it's plural or if it's a vowel, you just use those rules for both feminine and masculine. So if you went to that first and tried figuring it out and stressing over it, you just wasted a little bit of time. So let's start with La France. Are we talking about to or from? So let's start with the to category. Is it plural? Nope. Does it start with a vowel? No. Now we have to memorize if that's masculine or feminine. Turns out it's feminine. So let's go back here. Do we use the à la rule? No, we have to use the word en. So it is en France. Okay? And let's start over. To or from. Now we're going to say from. Is it plural? No. Is there a vowel? No. Is it masculine or feminine? Oops, excuse me. It is feminine still. So, what do we use? De France, not de la France, de France. Right. Let's move on to l'Espagne. Let's work on the first category, to. We're asking ourselves, again, is it plural? Nope, not plural. Remember, you can tell if it's plural if it has an S. Is there a vowel? Yes, there is a vowel. So you do not have to worry if it's masculine or feminine. If it's a vowel, you are always going to use the ones in this rule. Right? Remember, if it's plural, you're always going to use the ones in this rule. What if it's both plural and starts with a vowel? That's why I have you ask yourself if it's plural first, because you just want to stop there and use the plural. It's like your trump card. I've talked about that again. I use that analogy in class. That's like your king. That king is going to beat the queen or the jack. So if it's plural, that's going to beat out if it's a vowel, or masculine or feminine. You're always going to use that. So let's go back. We determined it's a vowel, so it does not matter if it's feminine. You're going to always use the en here on this sign, and the de apostrophe, this sign. And moving on to l'Irak, we're going to use our to category. Is that plural? No. Is there a vowel? Yes. So it doesn't even matter if it's masculine. We have to use that en on Iraq and d'Irak. And we have now le Brésil. Is that plural? No. Vowel? No. Alright, let's hope that you memorize whether that's masculine or feminine. It is masculine. So let's go to our rule here. We have to use O. That didn't change from the rules that you learned on prepositions from before. So O. And du. Finally, les États-Unis. Is that plural? Yes. Is it a vowel? Yes. So which one do you use? Do you remember? I used that analogy about the trump cards. You're always going to use your plural rule. Don't use the vowel. I know itazuni starts with a vowel. That's why I had you ask yourself if it's plural first. No need to go any further. And I'm going to write the shortening for it here. And, oops, excuse me. Sorry, this is supposed to be Rositazuni. And this column has the from. Daisy Tazuni. Okay? So, again, ask yourself those questions in that order, and you will save yourself a lot of trouble. Please have these memorized. Make sure you know the difference with these math equations compared to the ones with the normal preposition contractions, like for places like the school, the library, the bookstore, that sort of thing. There are some exceptions to the rule with countries.